What is good, Backloggers? If you're a JRPG fan, I think it's safe to assume you've at least heard of or even played the original Final Fantasy VII. A landmark title, not just for the genre, but video games as a whole, still fondly remembered by many as one of the best JRPGs to ever grace our lives. When it came out in 1997, it changed the landscape for things to come. Many amazing JRPGs would release on the PlayStation in the following years, like Xenogears, The Legend of Dragoon, or Vagrant Story. But even before that faded year, the system was home to some incredible role-playing games, most of them being overshadowed by what came after. One of those games is Wild Arms, a first-party Sony title that often goes toe-to-toe against the big hitters on Sony's first console in rankings and tier lists, but somehow fell off after a few entries and completely flew under my radar until you guys voted for me to play it. So let's see if one of PlayStation's oldest franchises can manage to blow me off my feet. Or ass, I don't game standing up, even more than 25 years after it came out. Oh, and if you're thinking old games like these don't concern you, you can play the game on your PS4 and PS5 right now through PlayStation Plus, so you should definitely stick around to find out if it's worth it. Welcome to the Backlog project, where we play through a gigantic backlog of games and you get to choose which one will be covered next. Just head down to the description of the video to take part in our weekly poll and pick your favorite. Wild Arms sets the mood perfectly even before the game starts. The opening video stands in stark contrast to other JRPGs from that time that went very heavy into the usual anime feel by using J-pop songs and showing off the epic combat. Wild Arms, however, opens with a somber melody of acoustic guitar strings and a video following our heroes just traveling the beautiful land together and meeting up at the end of the scene. This first impression carries through all of the game's narrative. Your party isn't made up of legendary heroes fated to save the world, but simple and flawed people that, due to individual circumstances, come to travel together. The antagonists share a similar trait. They aren't very organized, they mess up and they quibble among themselves, and they are not an all-powered force that you need to collect legendary items for to have a chance at beating, making the whole plot grounded and involved. Yes, your main goal is still saving the world towards the end, but how it all comes together is very down to earth. The setting and world building of the game is one of its greatest strengths. Set in something like a usual medieval fantasy world that is flooded with working technology from ages ago, like motors, but also guns and giant robots. Since most people barely understand what these even are, there are very skewed perceptions of what machines could do to society and whether they should be used at all. While archaeologists and engineers try to uncover the truths behind their finds and use them for the advancement of humanity, there are also people who would and could use them as weapons. The game features many different typical fantasy tropes, but makes them fit into this unique world. Demons, for example, aren't your usual evil creatures from hell, but are actually artificial beings made of metal. No one knows where they come from or who built them, so they are rightfully feared. Filgaia, our game world, is also suffering an ever-increasing drought that has already swallowed whole continents, and no one even knows why, let alone how to stop it. When you start the game, you're given the choice between one of our three heroes. First up is Rudy, an orphan that grew up in a small village. One day, a kid from the village goes exploring in a forbidden cave. Stupid kids. And the whole village goes to search for them. Just when Rudy arrives to find the child, they accidentally set free a long-sealed demon from those ruins that promptly attacks the kid. Rudy, being a JRPG protagonist, obviously rushes in to help, only being able to kill the demon by resorting to his arm, as in ARM. If you just ask yourself, okay, what the hell is that? Then you're in the same situation as all of the villagers because they witnessed that fight. An arm is basically an artificial limb attached to a human that allows them to use it as a weapon if necessary. They're mostly indistinguishable from normal limbs, other than the fact that they can shoot bullets, lasers, fire, and other cool stuff in combat. Remember what I just told you about that fear of technology and demons being mostly just robots in this world? Well, imagine the reaction of these villagers when they see an orphan they've been sheltering for years go all Terminator on another robot.
You're close. Give them to me. Now.
Needless to say, they aren't really taking this all too well, resulting in Rudy being exiled from the village. With no family left in the world and nowhere to go, he becomes a so-called drifter, probably best described as a sort of mercenary traveling the world. Our second character is Jack, a treasure hunter traveling the world in search of the ultimate power to help him confront the mistakes of his past. Always at his side is Hanpan, a talking mouse who acts as both comedic relief as well as a moral compass for the group. Their journey starts in the Memory Temple, searching for said power, where they mess up and have to escape the deadly traps. On their way out, they learn of the race of elves, ancient beings that could just hold the answers to all of Jack's questions. This chapter of the game doesn't just give you some interesting lore though, it also shows you early on that Wild Arms isn't serious all of the time. Plain Indiana Jones references and Jack getting shit-talked by Hanpan the second the game starts definitely make for an opening chapter you won't forget. The last of our trio is Cecilia, the Princess of Adelheid, which is the kingdom of the central continent of Filgaia. She spent most of her time at Curan Abbey studying magic, and her 17th birthday marks adulthood, her official ascension into royalty, and also the start of the game. Before she can depart for the kingdom, however, a mysterious voice calls out to her, beckoning her to find a secret passage in the abbey that ultimately leads to her meeting a so-called guardian that was sealed in a tome. It is here that she learns that her royal blood enables her to act as a medium between Filgaia and the spirit dimension, which will supposedly be vital in restoring the world from its increasingly barren state. The three of them happen to meet when they arrive at Adelheid and decide to adventure together for a while. In that process, they help Adelheid recover a golem, one of the giant robots that lie dormant all over the world from monster-infested ruins, acting as an escort for the researchers and engineers. As thanks for their services, they are invited to the Kingdom's Ruin Festival. No idea who thought of that name, but whoo boy does it fit the occasion. The festival gets crashed by demons, the golems get stolen, and much of the populace, including the king, are killed by the invasion. Powerless against the overwhelming might, Cecilia offers the demons her family heirloom in exchange for the safety of her kingdom, a trait she will soon regret, the teardrop being the key to the demons reviving their leader, Mother, who was lost in their initial invasion of Filgaia 1,000 years ago. Our trio pledges to get back the teardrop and stop Mother's revival, and thus begins a story of many failures, betrayal, and formed friendships and rivalries on both sides, making this a tale you will not soon forget. Like many games of this era, Wild Arms features two different styles of graphics. While the general gameplay is presented in beautiful 2D sprite work with your typical JRPG bird's eye view, combat is fully rendered in 3D with an action movie-like camera that follows characters' movements. In this day and age, the 3D graphics are obviously not very impressive, but when the game came out in 1996, 3D games were still few and far between, especially in the RPG genre. Seeing your characters not only have a 3D model, but even a dynamic camera that follows their moves was not just a novel idea, but also extremely well executed for the time. Even nowadays, camera systems like this are hard to get to feel right, and most turn-based RPGs stick to easier methods, so I can wholeheartedly commend them for what they accomplished here. Even Final Fantasy VII, that came out more than a year after Wild Arms and was lauded as a technical masterpiece, isn't able to do what is happening here. It's not all roses though. For one, the frame rate in combat is horribly inconsistent and makes moves look like they're in slow motion. The combat is rather slow in general, but this just hammers it down even more. Also, the special effects go from pretty cool to comically bad, with every single boss enemy in the game exploding upon defeat for some weird reason. Like, I get it, they're technically robots, but seeing a zombie explode is just weird and unintentionally funny. Okay. Speaking of the monsters, whoever designed these needs to win some prize, because I've never seen uglier and more random monster designs in all of my years of playing games. Look at this. This is bad news. Yep, the monster is actually called that. Maybe you want to see more. Look at Die Fighter. or even just early game monsters like goblins, larvas, and balloons. My favorite one though is Rachel. Look at it, look at it! The rest of the game, however, which is displayed in your typical retro RPG 2D sprites, is very nice to look at all the way through. Clean sprite work combined with creative art design create a world that is full of different structures, architecture, and unique places, letting you fully immerse yourself in the beauty of Filgaia. Characters are also very expressive for 2D sprites, boasting different animations that breathe life into their otherwise stale faces, while special effects in the water or weather effects like wind on a mountain further expand on that feeling that you're really exploring a cohesive world here. What's with the font though? I don't know why they thought this was a good idea to use such a stylized font for a game that heavily relies on text to convey its story and gameplay, and I certainly can grant them that it is unique and recognizable, but I find this unexpectedly hard to read. It feels like seeing cursive for the first time, not quite unknown, but also not familiar enough so I could read it easily. I've never had this problem in a game before where I had to really get used to how letters look for a while before I could comfortably read text without actively trying. Might be a weird take, but maybe you had a similar experience? WildArm's soundtrack sounds like the secret love child between The Legend of Zelda and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Naruto Michiko made heavy use of instruments used in Western movies like acoustic guitars, mandolins, finger cymbals, and a whole lot of whistling. But that's not the only thing making this soundtrack stand out from the plethora of JRPGs out there. She also managed to compose an OST that is subtle enough to not take constant center stage, but retains the memorability that JRPG compositions are famous for. I find it hard to describe this soundtrack in words because it feels like no matter what I say, I'm doing a disservice to this incredibly layered and flawless piece of video game history. Her use of light motives is akin to Uematsu Nobuo and Soken Masayoshi's work on the Final Fantasy series, with constant callbacks to tracks you've previously heard in the game, heartfelt moments using modified versions of character themes and town themes invoke a level of nostalgia and warmth that I only associate with Kondo Koji's work. Really, the only thing I can fault this soundtrack with is the fact that it only has 2 dungeon and 1 combat tracks. With the game featuring 28 unique dungeons, I would have liked some more variety here, since they are very unique in their aesthetics as well as puzzle design, so always featuring the same music felt a little off. Same with combat, hearing the same combat theme over the course of a 30+ hour game, even though it's really good, makes it go stale after a while. At least there are a few unique boss themes. Another thing that annoyed me, even though it's more the game's fault than the soundtracks, is that whenever you reload an area after a fight, the music restarts from the beginning. I know that this is an issue many games in the genre suffer from, even to this very day, but it doesn't make it any less annoying. If any game devs are listening to this, please let your game continue the music from where it left off after battle. Sound effects are a completely different matter though. While the game features pleasant and Final Fantasy-esque menu sounds, the combat sound effects are laughably bad. Maybe it's a sign of the time, but hearing these completely overplayed sounds when using simple magic, or sometimes having sounds that don't fit the ability at all, leaves kind of a sour taste in my mouth. Those explosions every boss goes through when it dies are also so unbelievably loud that I thought my game was breaking down when I beat the first few bosses. Enjoying the video so far? That like button to let YouTube know this video is worth showing to more people. Thank you for being awesome. As a bona fide classic JRPG, WildArms has you spent a lot of time traveling the game's world, visiting towns, meeting NPCs, and exploring dungeons. Most of that isn't really all that revolutionary and handles just like in your average role-playing game. WildArms features an overworld map that you can explore to find the towns and dungeons that each are their own map you load into. Even though there are barely any load times, this is not an open world game, although you probably weren't expecting that from a mid-90s video game. Towns are mostly the same as in all of these games, so I won't go too deep into it. it. What I will say is that the game features tons of hidden items all throughout the world, so it's always worth inspecting every barrel or other environmental thingamajig you can find to get some more loot. Where the game takes a bit of a different approach though are its dungeons. Whereas most JRPG dungeons are at best little labyrinths with light puzzles and at worst straight corridors filled with random enemies, Wild Arms takes inspiration from games like The Legend of Zelda and throws some decent brain teasers your way. Instead of just your average move that block to this position stuff though, the game provides you with a multitude of field abilities in the form of so-called tools to help you in solving these puzzles. Each of your characters can find 4 tools for a total of 12 that each have a different use. For example, while Rudy starts with bombs that allow him to blow up crates, crack walls, and other things in best Zelda fashion, Jack can use Hanpan to activate switches or open chests that are too far to reach otherwise. There's also more complicated stuff like Cecilia's pocket watch that you can use to not only reset a puzzle if you mess it up, but also gets used in time shenanigan puzzles. With the game even going as far as combining the usage of different tools towards the later parts, they add another layer of complexity to the puzzles Wild Arms can throw at you, and will always have you excited to explore new places and see what they will offer you. Oh, and you can sprint in a fixed direction. It's not really useful and pretty finicky, but I thought I might as well mention it. Oh, and did I tell you that the save points in this game are fucking birds? Game of the year. I told you the combat was slow in Wild Arms, but how does it even work? For the most part, it's turn-based combat at its most basic. Characters and enemies have a speed stat that decides when they take action, and they do that until one side is dead. Usually the enemy side, because this game is really easy. All 3 characters have their own abilities. Rudy uses his arms that have limited ammo, while Jack and Cecilia are more conventional MP users. Jack uses them to amplify his attacks, and Cecilia is your average mage with offensive and defensive spells in her arsenal. What sets the game apart a little is the force system. When fighting, your characters build up their force bar that has 4 levels and can be used to activate special skills. For example, while Rudy can use just one of his bars to give his next arm attack 100% hit chance, he can also deplete his whole bar to activate Fury Shot, a super powerful limit break-like attack. Each character has 4 skills that revolve around their abilities and combat role, giving a bit more depth to the otherwise rather simple combat. Of course, like most games of that era, it's also based on random encounters, so you'll be forced to fight a decent bit while exploring the world, especially with the chance of escaping a fight being weirdly low, so it's usually faster to just flatten your adversaries. I told you about each character having their own unique combat skills, but they don't just learn them through leveling up. Rudy's arms, for example, are usually found in pretty well-hidden treasure chests in dungeons, so you must explore well if you want to have the strongest ones available. After you find them, you can visit an arms merchant in cities that will not only sell you ammo, but also upgrade each arm's attack, accuracy, and ammo capacity for a good chunk of money, so get grinding if you want that trophy for upgrading them all. Jack's ability, called fast draw techniques, are a bit less grindy to get, but definitely require just as much attention. You don't find them as items, but they are usually either tied to finding training statues that pit Jack against some strong enemies in a solo fight, or require you to complete a side quest. After unlocking them, you need to use them in combat to master their actual effects, otherwise they are nothing more than stronger base attacks. Some secret fast draws are even learned by using a specific one on a debuffed enemy, so there's a lot of experimentation involved if you want to unlock Jack's full potential. A really nifty feature of Wild Arms is its magic system. Each spell in the game is based on a combination of 2 different elements, and you get to combine them at your leisure in towns. On your journey, you will acquire new spell slots to add more and more magic to Cecilia's repertoire. These spells can range from your standard elemental attacks like fireballs to utility like analyzing weaknesses, and even buffs and debuffs like shields or poison. If you manage to find every spell slot, Cecilia can learn a staggering 64 spells combined from both simple and advanced black and white magic. You can even name each spell to your liking. If you're into fun and interesting magic systems in games, you have to play Wild Arms. Nah, fuck that, I can't lie to you. Magic in this game is almost completely useless. Elemental weaknesses barely change a spell's damage, debuffs constantly miss, and even when they hit they are negligible in effect, and a lot of the spells are just plain weird and I have no idea where I would even use them. For example, Berserk puts one of your teammates into a frenzy, making them unable to use anything but normal attacks, but increasing their damage by 10%. 10%! Why the f would I forsake all utility a character can offer, like using skills or items or even summons, for a measly 10% increase on the damage of their weakest attack? With only a few actually useful spells out there, you will constantly use those once you have them and might as well unlearn the others. If they at least made some bosses specifically weak to these spells, you could argue that it's fun to find out where to use which spell, even if they aren't generally very useful. But they didn't. In fact, the bosses, which should be the highlight fights in a turn-based RPG, are for the most part the same fight with different models and animations. Almost no boss does anything unique or requires you to change your strategy like at all. You always do the same thing. Slow and armor down on the boss, maybe buff your character's speed with quick, and then use your strongest arms and abilities with Rudy and Jack while Cecilia heals, provides items for MP and ammunition, and if she really has nothing else to do, use your strongest offensive spell. Honestly, buffing your characters isn't even necessary most of the time because slow is enough to make any boss in the game go last in a turn if you aren't severely underleveled. By the way, this even goes for the super bosses in the game. As long as you leveled up enough and got some decent gear, you can beat them just fine without any special strategies. Speaking of gear, Wild Arms features a rudimentary gear system. Every character has slots for weapons, armor, helmets, and runes. The first three are character specific, so you can't really do anything more than always equip the best one you can buy or find. Runes, however, are a bit more interesting. These come from all over the game, be it story or side quests, chests, or even secret bosses. Not only do they not just increase some stats but decrease others, they also allow you to each summon a guardian specific to each rune. Doing so uses up half of your force gauge, but is often very much worth it. Most guardians do some sort of elemental attack that deals a lot more damage than Cecilia could ever dream of, but there are some more niche things like a high chance one-hit kill attack. Very useful for farming rare enemies, but as I said, niche. Beat the game but still can't get enough of Wild Arms? Or maybe you, like me, are a trophy hunter and want to get that coveted platinum. Well, there's a decent chunk of post-game content in Wild Arms to complete if you're up for a challenge, which in classic JRPG terms can be translated to grind. There are a number of secret bosses in the game, as well as a combat arena and post-game dungeon to tackle, all of which require you to level up your party a bit more than you would need to for the final boss. The best way for doing that is by going to a little island in the southern part of the world map and hope you encounter the rare Hayokonton, which not only gives you massive XP, but also drops the items needed to get to one of the secret bosses. So go there, grind for an hour or two, and you're good to go. As I said, the bosses aren't really any different to fight than the ones you fought so far. The more interesting and fun thing here is figuring out how to even get to them. If you don't want to go around the world looking for clues from random NPC dialogue and trying to use your tools creatively, there are many guides online that tell you exactly what to do. For those that like to tinker around and find secrets on their own, Wild Arms did a spectacular job at giving you enough hints while still being vague enough to consider it a secret. Honestly, I like this a lot. If you want, you can find some cool stuff, but people who just want to stop after the main game don't feel like they miss out because the game doesn't put a "Hey, you finished the game, now try beating the dungeon you opened up" in your face. Wild Arms is a memorable experience all around, with a unique setting, beautiful music, and a, for JRPG standards, low-stakes story that explores some interesting takes on isolation, racism, and sense of self. It also features very engaging exploration through the use of smart puzzles and secrets throughout the whole game. Combat-wise, Wild Arms is JRPG comfort food at its finest. It's simple, easy, but has enough quirks and personality to at least stay interesting and fun, if not challenging. No matter if you're a hardcore JRPG fan looking for an idiosyncratic experience, or a more casual enjoyer that wants an accessible intro to the genre, Wild Arms delivers on all fronts and then some. After completing Wild Arms, we had 35 hours and 7 minutes of total playtime, 1,341 battles fought, 21 runes collected, 1 game over due to trying the arena too early. 152 times I ran into a wall because sprinting sucks. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to always keep that backlog rolling.